welcome to Roll with the Punches.
Thank you. Great to be here, Tiff.
It is a pleasure. Now, just to get things out of the way so that I can adult on throughout the episode, can we just get a couple of lines of hot potato out of the way?
Hot potato, hot potato. Hot potato, hot potato. Hot potato, hot potato. Potato, 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 potato.
So good, so good. My inner 6-year-old has been going nuts all week for this moment, all week.
Well, I hope it's delivered the goods.
It really has, it really has.
Good.
If you had told me years ago that one day I'd be sitting here and Greg Page would be singing Hot Potato just to me, I would have been pretty stoked.
Well, that's good. I'm glad.
So you've had a big year, you've done some amazing things, and I'd love to talk about that. But I guess to kick things off in the episode, I always like to find out who's the human underneath it all, who is the man behind the yellow sweater that delivered so much joy to children over the years?
Well, that's a very good question. Who is the man? The man is somebody that loves life, that is passionate about several things and loves to succeed at what he does. You know, I guess that's the man. It's life excites me.
Yeah.
Life is something that I think, you know, it's there to make what you want of it. There's every opportunity, and I know there's adversity in many ways for many people. And I think that's the challenge in life, is identifying opportunity as opposed to adversity. But it's about recognizing adversity when you confront it and making sure that you then look for opportunity to overcome adversity. I think that's the beauty of life, because there's always opportunity. There's always adversity, but it's what you focus on that helps find your way through all of that.
I absolutely love that. That is my ethos in life.
Yeah.
We're going to get along like a house on fire for the next hour, Greg. I can tell that already. Well, tell me what got you into the career. Like, how does one get into dressing up and bringing kids happiness on stage via songs about potatoes and fruit salad?
Well, you know what? I think I would be tempted to say it was fate. I would be tempted to say that it was predestined, that things happened. And I don't know if everybody can relate to this, but certainly for me, there are times in your life when there are things that are just calling you to do something, and you recognize that as a moment of action. And for me, there were many things that led to a moment of action where I decided that I wanted to be a roadie. Now, people might know the Wiggles. They also might know the Cockroaches. But what they might not know is that I was not actually a part of the Cockroaches. I was younger than the guys in the Cockroaches. I was a fan of the Cockroaches growing up. So I was in high school, and the Cockroaches had their top number one hit actually in Australia, She's the One. And I loved that song. I loved the music of the Cockroaches. I thought it was just fun, party vibe music. And that to me epitomized what music should be. It should be fun, energetic, and it should just make you feel good. So I loved the Cockroaches. And when it got to year 11 in high school, for work experience, I wanted to be a roadie. So I said to the Cockroaches, I rang up their management. I said, look, I want to do work experience as a sound engineer with the Cockroaches. So I did that. So cutting a long story short, taking that moment to do something that was a little bit abnormal, you know, not going to an office for work experience, but following that calling, that sense inside of me that I had, that there was something there. Something was calling me towards entertainment. And it was during that time, or a bit after that, actually, after I'd done that period of work experience, that Anthony Field, the Blue Wiggle.
Yep.
He was in the Cockroaches, and he pulled me aside one day. He was 9 years older than me, and he said, look, Greg, can't be a roadie all your life. This should be your goal, to be a roadie. He said, what do you want to do in life? I said, well, look, I want to do something with music. And I remember at school, a number of our teachers would bring their guitar into the classroom, and that just resonated with me. So if there's something I'd like to do other than, working behind the scenes in music, I'd like to be a teacher. And I didn't know this, but Anthony was studying early childhood teaching at that point in time. So he'd done many things through his life. He went into university as a mature age student. He was studying early childhood. And he said, well, if you're going to do teaching, don't do primary school teaching where it's just filling in stencils and getting things right or wrong. Do early childhood teaching, because that's all about creative expression and letting the child be who they are and the real self of the child. I didn't really understand all that at the time, but I thought if I can use music in the classroom, then that would be a good thing. And Anthony said to me, by the way, at the university where I'm studying, there's 300 girls and 5 guys. So you've got a pretty good chance there. So not that was the persuading factor, but, it was something that resonated, being able to use music and have it all about creativity. And so that was a defining moment too. So it's looking at life and going, okay, look, this might be a different path than what I thought I might take, and a different way of doing things than I thought might get me somewhere. But that opened up a door, because that opportunity to go to university is really what led to me, obviously knew Anthony already, but Murray was at university as well. And that's how the Wiggles got formed, basically, because we were studying to be teachers, we were musicians, and we were just passionate about what we did. So that's what I mean by, you have this thing inside of you, you know what it is you want to do, but sometimes it's a different path, and from the path, doors will open. And that's the opportunity that you've got to identify, and you've got to go, okay, well, that's a different door than I thought it might be, but I'm going to see where it takes me.
I'm really big on that. I really resonate with that, because I always think I have an idea. If someone on a podcast earlier this year, one of my mentors, he asked me at the end of the podcast, what's next? What do you see? Where do you see yourself in 12 months? And I said, and I was umming, and he said, you don't have to have an answer. And I said, I'm not going to make one up, because if you had asked me 6 months ago where I would have been, I never would have said where I am right now. And I'd hate to just attach myself to the idea of something just for the sake of saying this is where I should be.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, if you know deep inside what you're passionate about and what you want to do, life will take you there if you just trust it and do the work.
Yeah. I think sometimes if you hear people talk about successful people having goals, I think goals have to be flexible, and it shouldn't be a matter of that you strive to achieve the goal. You strive to achieve the steps that it takes to get to that goal. And that's what's important, because you might have this goal here and you might take the steps that get you towards that goal, but ultimately you end up at this goal over here because things change. You change.
Yeah.
Every step along the way, you change. And if you're not changing, then there's a problem, because that's what we're here for. We're here to change and grow. So every step of the way, I used to use this analogy that, when you climb up on a ladder, you see things differently. So every rung of the ladder to success, you see things in a different way. So if you imagine yourself down on the ground, you see things from ground level. Take a step up on that ladder, things change. You see things slightly differently. You get up to the very top, you're looking way down on things. You see things very differently indeed. But all the steps along the way have led to seeing what you're seeing from the top. And, you might start on this ladder here, and as you get to this rung, you might think, hang on, I want to see what's around there. So you step around to this ladder here that helps you see things differently from there. And then you go up that ladder, and that takes you to that different goal that I was talking about. So that's what I find fascinating about life, that, as human beings, I think there is this part of us that programs us to be rigid and to be very much stayed in who we think we are. But part of what we're here for is to change and grow. And if we don't embrace that, you end up getting stuck, and you end up getting miserable. You end up being stale. And that stale energy then prevents you from growing further. So it becomes a catch-22, or, a vicious cycle. And that's part of the joy of life, is being able to break that vicious cycle and step outside of who you currently are and become somebody new.
Tell me about the conversation. Like, tell me about, like, who brought up this idea of being the Wiggles?
Yeah, that was Anthony. He had the idea. He'd been at university for 2 years already. He'd learnt a lot about children,
Yeah.
He'd been listening to a lot of early childhood music, and he just believed that there was another way of doing music for children that was a bit different, you know. So we got together, we threw some ideas around, and it took some time to sort of come up with what it was. And really, the Wiggles that it ended up being was different to the Wiggles that it started as. So over a period of about 6 weeks, or maybe even 4 or 5 months, to be honest, we were writing songs, recording songs, working on them, trying to work out what the Wiggles was. And ultimately, it came down to the fact that when we released our first CD, we had to put on a show. We had to go out and promote the CD. And that's when we kind of came up with what the Wiggles, or the essence of the Wiggles, really was. And that was kind of this magic moment where we went, you know, this is really something special and something that's different. Kids haven't really seen this before. So, yeah, I think that was what worked in our favour, and that you know, it was a combination of the right personalities, the right formula, and the right time.
Certainly stuck.
Yeah, look, they're still going. To Anthony's credit, he's amazing. He's, what, 9 years older than me, so he's 57 or thereabouts. And he's still at it because he loves it. He's so passionate about it, and he's so good at it too. So I think that it's his thing, you know, that's what he's here to do, and he's still doing it, and he's doing an amazing job.
Yeah. Throughout, how many years did you do that for?
I was there for about 16 years, and then I left in 06. So 91 to 96, it was 16 years kind of.
Yeah. What did you learn? How did it change you? Tell me about the things you got out of that.
Do you know what? I think I probably didn't learn much until after I left. There's lots of things.
Tell me about that.
Well, look, I started in the Wiggles when I was 19, so I was quite young and quite naive, and I guess idealistic in a lot of ways. You know, like I was saying, I was trapped in who I thought I should be and who I thought I was going to be in years to come. So I was trapped in this way of thinking, and very inflexible, I think I was, in a lot of ways. I learned a lot at the time about children and, you know, entertaining children and creating educational content for children. I learned all that, but the really important stuff about life I learned afterwards. And that's the sort of stuff, you know, to do with relationships and getting on with people, that at the time we kind of, not that we had major disagreements or fights or anything, but we would have these little tensions between us. And, you know, you don't want that. You don't want to have tension with people. And negotiating that is always hard. When you can truly see somebody else's perspective, that's when relationships become easy, because that's when you understand someone. I didn't understand things because I was so young, and it's not an excuse. It's just looking at things retrospectively and saying why it was. I hadn't experienced enough of life and relationships with people to understand how to understand someone and see things from their perspective, that you're not always right. You don't always have the solutions, that not everybody thinks the same way as you do. And I think that was my flaw, that I just thought, well, everybody thinks the same as me. So why are we having this disagreement? If you're seeing things the same way I'm seeing them, how can you not see it this way? It's that old analogy of two people standing on different sides of a tree, seeing the same tree, but seeing totally different patterns in the bark. You can't comment on the same thing and have the same perspective when you're seeing things from different sides. So truly getting that, truly understanding where somebody else is coming from, that didn't come to me till much later. And look, it is what it is, but, you know, it's great when you can actually achieve that and grow and get things not right, but get things better than when you did in the past.
Yeah. So when you left, what did you do next?
Oh, look, I struggled for a while, actually. I was really lost. I was unwell at the time. When I made the decision to leave, I didn't have a diagnosis for what was wrong with me. I was having sort of dizzy spells, and I'd fainted a few times. I wasn't feeling right. So I left the group, then subsequently got diagnosed, and still took about 18 months to get myself back on track physically. But emotionally, I was, not great, because I just left everything that had been a part of my life. I had separated from my wife, my first wife, left the Wiggles, and it was like this big void in life. What do I do next? And I kind of got through that by exploring spirituality and learning some of this stuff that I now know. But I think there were still things that weren't right for me. I would be tempted to say it was almost mental health issues, but I know it's not real mental health. I think it's more emotional health. When you go through these things in life, your emotions kind of go up and down, and you struggle to control the emotions.
Mm.
When you can master your emotions, that's when you can master life. And I had done a lot of reading about emotions and those kinds of things, but I hadn't mastered it. And I'm still mastering it now. I'm still learning, but I understand things a lot better now. Back then, I was really lost. I tried my hand at different things that I'd always wanted to do, but they weren't the things that really I was passionate about in life. And for me, the things that I'm passionate about are entertainment, and specifically children's entertainment. They're the things that really excite me. So without being able to do that for a period of time, I really struggled, and I tried my hand at other things, and I didn't succeed at those things. I failed at them, and it's because they weren't for me. They weren't the things I should have been doing. But I had to learn that sometimes you just got to wait. Sometimes you've just got to accept that now is not the time for something. Now is the time for just waiting and waiting for the right time. And, sometimes the right time is the time just to do nothing and just, be at one with yourself. That's probably what I should have done at that time.
What is spirituality? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I don't have an answer, because I'm still exploring it. What it means to me is that I definitely believe that there is something greater than us, but what that is, I don't know. See, I was raised as a Christian, and I'm prepared to accept a lot of the Christian values and some of the teachings there, particularly that there is something greater, but I don't know. I can't necessarily agree that it is the Christian definition, because who knows? But I just know that there's something there, and I just feel that there's something much greater at play. And I think what happened to me earlier this year happened for a reason. And that's fate or destiny, or I don't know. It's just, so to me, spirituality it's a big thing. It's something that we as humans can't grasp, because our humanness or our mortality places us in such a position to not really understand it. But that's why we're here, to come closer to that. Through living these experiences that we have, we live, we learn, we go back, we repeat. We don't break that habit of what we're doing. And that's the growth cycle. And that's where I think that spirituality really plays a strong part in understanding that growth, as I was saying before, it's about growth. And when you don't grow, when you keep going back and repeating the same things, getting it wrong over and over again, and going, why am I experiencing this again? Why is this happening to me again? Why does this happen all the time? Well, there's a reason why, and it's usually within. That's the opportunity for growth. And yeah, I find that quite beautiful and quite amazing. To me, that's spirituality. It's in here, it's within, but it's also without, and it's that connection to everybody as well. And because we're all the same, we are all the same, no matter whether you're somebody who's seemingly got it all. I don't believe that you can look at anyone and think, man, that person's got it made, because you don't know what's going on inside their head. You don't know. And what's going on inside one person's head is probably going on inside many, many people's heads. And it's that struggle. It's that battle between things aren't quite the way I want them to be. I want them to be like this, but then that battle between accepting that it is what it is, and that is what life is.
Yeah, yeah. It's really beautiful you say that. It reminds me of a time a few years ago, and I went to a mentoring group, and I went to it actually to experience and watch and take notes on running it, sort of from an interest in this is what I'd like to do. I like to, I'd like to mentor people and learn how to run things like this. The day that I went, I was having a really bad day, and I was like, I don't really want to go now. I'm not feeling great. But I sat in this room with 10 other people, and it was a real casual session. And we had a bit of an intro, and then everyone went around the circle and they talked about why they were there. And there were people everyone was completely different. There were people with some really bad mental health issues. There were people with relationship issues. There were people with business problems. Everyone was there for some help. And I just remember everyone feeling like, it was like that tree you're talking about. Everyone felt like the polar opposite to me. But as they spoke, I have goosebumps right now thinking of it, but as they spoke, I remember just thinking, me too. I get you. I feel you, and I feel the same as you. Like, I get it. And it was such an experience to know that, you think you walk past people in the street and they're so different, but deep down, everything just, when you really unpack it, it all just comes together, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, there's so much sameness in body. It's just the way we experience those things is different sometimes. And I think that is, the beauty of life, being able to acknowledge that other people are going through similar things, albeit different manifestations of it. Everybody goes through similar things, and that's what can make that's where I come back to Christianity and some of the teachings about compassion and understanding people and being able to be there to support other people. So yeah, spirituality for me is a real blend of philosophies and principles, I guess.
Let's talk me through your incident earlier this year. That was unexpected. Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was it was really, it still blows my mind to think that it happened, because I had no warning signs or pre-existing symptoms.
Yeah.
Going back many years, look, I've always had a pretty bad diet. I've never been a really good eater. I've always eaten fairly bad foods. And there was a period when I was in the Wiggles, probably 2004 to 2006, I started putting on some weight. And I think I was in denial that I was getting a bit too heavy. So I wasn't looking after myself back then. Then when I left the group, I got even heavier. And then I met Vanessa, my wife, and she's a cardiac nurse of all things. And she had been on at me for some time to lose weight, to eat a bit better. So back then I got my cholesterol checked, and it was high. It was around 6.6, I think 6.2 at the time. So I changed my diet. That to me was a warning sign. So I changed my diet then. Still didn't make enough changes probably to make a big difference. But, I made changes in an attempt to make it better. So I lost a lot of weight, got back to more of a healthy weight range, and then jump forward, 10 years or so to this year. And I've been exercising. I've been quite fit. I've been walking 7.5 Ks every day, going to the gym, playing cricket, playing tennis, doing all of that with no symptoms, no chest pain or anything that they talk about in terms of warning signs that you might be in danger of a heart attack. So I thought I was okay. Then the night of the show, obviously, I was not okay and suffered a massive heart attack and immediate cardiac arrest. And that's the scary part, I think, having survived and now understanding things a lot better that I didn't understand before, that this is what can happen. And it happens every day to thousands of people every year in Australia. They have a sudden cardiac arrest and they don't survive. So for me to have survived that, I'm very fortunate. And, it's a big moment to think now have to try and be an advocate to try and help other people understand a number of different things. But yeah, yeah, I still look back on it and I don't know. It's hard to explain.
It's funny, when I was speaking to my new sponsor of this show, which is AED Authority, which is fantastic, because I reached out specifically for people in this space, because I was taken aback. I looked up obviously some of the news stories of when it happened, and I watched the footage. And the first thing I thought, and you've just added to this now by telling me about your wife, but the first thing I thought was, this thing happens randomly. Like, the split second that happens, this guy happens to be surrounded by thousands of people, or hundred, well, I don't know how many people, but thousands of people, and a nurse right there that can save his life. But not only that, the moment it happened, you weren't on stage where, it was like you just walked off the stage so that it wasn't going to mortify people. It wasn't going to be traumatic for people. So that's the way I saw it. I was like, wow, this is, sometimes events are meant to be like, this guy's meant to do something. And now you're telling me that your wife is a cardiac nurse. I'm like,
yeah. And you know what, exactly what you said about when it happened, that's exactly what Vanessa has said to me. She said, exactly in the same context, it happened this way for a reason. It didn't happen during the show, center of the stage, because who knows what would have happened then. People would have been stunned. People would have not known what to do. The response would not have been the same. I don't know. But look, I got to the side of the stage and I collapsed. I don't remember collapsing. I remember lying on the floor, though. I remember just lying on the floor, feeling exhausted from the show. But it was actually my heart stopping and losing my breath. I thought I was out of breath from the show, but it wasn't until I watched the show back at the end, because it's really weird having woken up in hospital and watching all those news stories about myself and not remembering any of it, not knowing what happened. Out of curiosity, I watched it back to try and see if I could remember anything. And when I watched it back, right at the end, you can hear this horrible breathing sound underneath Murray talking and everything. And when I heard that, I listened and I thought, I remember that. I remember lying there, and I remember it's almost like a snoring kind of sound. And the first aid people talk about this in terms of when you're trying to identify if somebody needs CPR, if they're not, or they're not breathing normally, then that's when you need to start CPR. Now, when I listened back to that, I mean, I was not breathing normally. I was not just there kind of going. I was like, it's this horrible. When I heard it, I remembered lying there, trying to breathe, looking up at the ceiling. And then I think I kind of remember throwing myself on my side, or maybe somebody put on my side. I don't know. But I can kind of remember rolling onto my side. But yeah, it happened for a reason. It happened at that time with all those people around to make sure I survived. So it wasn't just a nurse that was there. There was a doctor, like a GP, and I think she was the first one to come up onto the stage. I think she was looking across the stage and could see where I was at the side, and she worked out that something wasn't right. She came over. Then the Wiggles, an employee of the Wiggles who was working on the merchandise stand, she was called over the radio because the crew knew that she was trained in first aid, so she came up. The Wiggles drummer had just done our course as well, so he came over. So there were 3 people working away on me for some time. Then Grace, the nurse, came up as well. And 20 minutes or so of CPR, and then the defibrillator put on me and zapped back to life. So it's an incredible story and a real testament to the CPR that these guys did. My brain is still functioning as well as it was beforehand, because, when you're without oxygen to the brain for 6 minutes, the brain can start to die. That's why CPR is so important, getting that blood flowing around the body up to the brain to keep it perfused with oxygen. So Steve, Grace, Therese, and Kim all did an amazing job to work together to ensure my survival, but not just my survival with my vital organs intact.
And so 20 minutes of CPR before the defibrillator. Is that right?
I think so. Look, it's like it must be so hard as a police officer to try and solve a murder, because with so many witnesses, nothing matches up. You know, there's no. So look, from the bits of information I've been able to gather, I reckon it was 20 minutes. I've heard people say 35 minutes. I've heard people say 25 minutes. I've heard people say 12 minutes. I think from what I can gather, it was around 20 minutes. And then the AE was applied, and then 3 shocks, and then bang, luckily, my heart started beating again. So, yeah, I mean, absolute heroes. Absolute heroes, these guys were to step in.
I was going to say, I'm a boxer, and 3 minutes is a lifetime when you're in the ring. 20 minutes must, in that situation, 20 minutes must feel like a lifetime.
When you're waiting on an ambulance, when you know that what you're doing, somebody's life depends on it. And look, talking to them afterwards, look, an event like this can affect people in different ways. And it's really important to understand that any attempt at resuscitating somebody is better than no attempt. So you're always better off to give it a go. And, you know, there's a story in the news recently, of course, the tragedy of Dean Jones passing in India. And Brett Lee is a friend of mine, and Brett performed CPR on Dean. And CPR isn't always going to work. That's just a fact. But it doesn't mean you should not try, because when you try, and this is the thing with Binger, you know, Brett stepped up and gave it a go. So at least Dean had a chance. Without anybody trying, he's got no chance. That's the point. Without CPR, that person has no chance. At least if you try, there is a chance they will survive. And thank God those people that night kept going for 20 minutes and didn't give up and go, look, you know, it's, and Vanessa reflects on this all the time. She thinks 20 minutes, that's a long time. Surely did nobody at any stage kind of look across and go, come on guys, this is 20 minutes. He's not going to make it, and just give up? No, they kept going, and thank God they did, because I'm still here and my kids have a dad, my wife has a husband, my parents have their son, because they did not give up. I'm just in awe of that every day of my life. I will never, ever forget those people that did not give up on me. And that's now my mission, to not give up on everybody else that can survive a sudden cardiac arrest, through greater awareness about cardiac arrest, through greater awareness about CPR, greater awareness about AEDs and the role they play in the chain of survival. I'll be doing this to the day I do die. You know?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Like, obviously, after reading up and researching into your case and realizing the stats and the numbers, so tell me about the numbers around, you know, survival of cardiac arrest.
Look, the scariest stat is that only 10% of people that experience cardiac arrest will survive. Okay, now we talk about a whole lot of other conditions and diseases, and we talk about, you know, how many people die from those. And every loss of life is a tragedy. There's no doubt about that. But what blew me away was when I woke up in hospital and the nurse said to me, "You're a very lucky man. Only 10% of people survive what you went through." And that didn't really hit home until I reflected on that a few moments later. I thought, he's just told me I've got broken ribs from where they did CPR. So that rang an alarm bell. Because you've got to remember, I woke up not fully understanding what had transpired because I was out to it. So being told people had done CPR on me, being told I only had a 10% chance of survival, that really impacted me. That stat, I still can't believe that in Australia in 2020, we don't have a better survival rate from sudden cardiac arrest than 10%. And to think that more people knowing CPR, having more AEDs or defibrillators out in the community readily available, that will drastically change that survival rate. It seems like it's so simple, and it is simple, we've just got to get people to embrace this and understand it. So the more people that understand, and it's not until you're touched by it. Like, I was totally oblivious to this before my event. I didn't even know what a defibrillator was. I mean, I'd heard the term. Of course, having a wife who works as a cardiac nurse, I know that it's a piece of medical equipment that she uses in the cath lab. But I didn't know that they were at Bunnings. I didn't know they were at Coles. I didn't know they were at Woolworths. There to be used if somebody has a cardiac arrest. So it's been a big learning curve for me. And I think there's a lot of people in the community that can really benefit from greater education about it, because greater education, as I said before, in relation to relationships and understanding people, whenever you understand something more deeply, that's when you can learn about it and grow and change things. And that's what needs to change in our community. We need more AEDs, and we need more people prepared to have a go at doing CPR when it's required. So I think we can change it. And, you know, talking again about the stats, it's interesting. This is probably a horrible analogy, but I think about the Roman army and that process that they used to call decimation. When the Roman army lost a battle, they'd go through and they'd draw the short straw. There was one short straw out of 10, and that drew the short straw was terminated by the rest of the battalion, right? That process was called decimation. Now, if 1 in 10 is called decimation, if you think about 9 in 10 people not surviving a cardiac arrest, what on earth is that? That's not decimation, that's decimation times 9. They're massive numbers that we're talking about. So in Australia, every year, we're talking about 20,000 people that lose their life through sudden cardiac arrest. And I do believe that we can at least improve those stats by another, instead of 10%, we need to aim for 20% next year, 30% the year after, so that after 6 or 7 years, we have a survival rate of 70% for sudden cardiac arrest.
Well, I was reading on AED Authority's website when I was looking at their products that survival rate goes from 5% to 72%, I think, with an AED. That is crazy.
It is crazy. So that 10% figure I talk about, I use that figure, but I have seen figures as low as 5%. It's ridiculously low. But yes, if you have the chain of survival in play, so the chain of survival is call, push, shock. So when you call for emergency services, when you push, when you do CPR, and when you shock with an AED, the chance of survival does go up to about 70%. And that's why I'm here, because I had the chain of survival in place. So yeah, it's a very powerful thing. And I think that, you know, there's no doubt AEDs have a long way to go in the community in terms of being popularized and being accepted. I think there's a lot of misinformation about them and misunderstanding. People think, oh no, I can't use it. It's a medical device. Well, that's not true. AEDs can be used by anybody. Even a child could use an AED. They're so simple. All you got to do is push the on button, and then it talks you through what to do. It explains exactly what to do. And again, any attempt at using it is better than none, because the only way you could hurt somebody with an AED is if you hit them with it. It won't patient. It won't shock somebody unless they need to be shocked. So once you put the pads on the chest of the patient, the machine actually reads the heart rhythm. And unless the heart rhythm is the type that can be shocked by the AED, it won't tell you to shock the patient, right? And if you stand back from the patient when the shock is delivered, you won't be harmed either. So that's another bit of misinformation, that people think, oh no, it's dangerous, I could get shocked. You won't get shocked. And even if you do happen to get shocked, there's no documented cases anywhere in the world of a rescuer being killed by an AED. But there's millions of cases of people being killed from somebody not using an AED. So nobody's been killed from using one. Plenty of people died because they haven't been used. So that's what people have to get in perspective, and just understand that they're not something that you have to be qualified to use to have a go at using it. They're not dangerous. The only risk of an AED is not using it when it should be used.
Mm.
And so that's the kind of education we need out there.
What's the difference between now I think you're a medical expert. What's the difference between a cardiac arrest and a heart attack?
I do know this one because having a cardiac nurse as a wife, she's explained this to me. And look, I didn't know either. And okay, so a heart attack is when the heart has a blockage in one of the arteries. So blood getting through, it's like when if you were to hold your finger with an elastic band, the blood wouldn't be getting through to your thumb, right? It would turn purple. So imagine that happening in your heart. So your heart starts to get under pressure and you'll feel pain in the chest. You'll get shortness of breath. You might feel dizzy. All those typical symptoms that people will talk about as warning signs that you're having a heart attack. That can go on for minutes. It can go on for hours. It can go on for days. I've heard people tell me that their husband had a 3-day heart attack. He even went and mowed the lawn whilst he was having chest pains and he's had a heart attack. That's a heart attack. Cardiac arrest is when the heart, the electrical system in the heart starts to play up. And this is where I'll have to put a disclaimer in that I'm not as fully qualified to talk about this as I should be, but the electrical system of the heart is what keeps firing. It's like, I guess, in a car engine, there's a spark plug that sort of tells the engine to go, right? When the spark plug of the heart stops firing correctly, the heart doesn't pump. So in my case, I had a heart attack. So my artery was 100% blocked. That caused the electrical system of the heart to get disrupted. So I went from having a heart attack to going to cardiac arrest almost immediately. So the electrical system stopped firing, the heart stopped pumping. It was just kind of quivering. There was no blood pumping around my body. That's cardiac arrest, when the electrical system is disrupted in the heart and it can't tell the heart to pump as it should, right? So that, beat every second or whatever it is that it does, 60 beats per minute, 80 beats per minute, whatever. It just starts going like this. It's a very small thing called ventricular fibrillation. It's fibrillating. When it's fibrillating, it needs to be defibrillated. And that's what a defibrillator does. So an automated external defibrillator, an AED. So the defibrillator goes on the chest, the shock is applied, and it actually stops the heart for a very brief second. It stops the heart and tells it to reboot. It's like rebooting your computer. It disrupts that electrical signal and gets the proper electrical signal going through the heart again so it can pump on its own. However, in the case of cardiac arrest, the danger isn't over then if you've got a heart attack that led to the cardiac arrest. That's when you need advanced medical care, right? So I still had a blocked artery, and had I not had the ambulance turn up, I would have gone back into ventricular fibrillation again. They would have needed to shock my heart again and keep shocking it back. It is very complicated, and I hope I've explained okay to people, but essentially a heart attack is the heart muscle not receiving blood supply through one of the major arteries or numerous of the arteries. Cardiac arrest is when the electrical system of the heart stops working as it should and the heart doesn't beat to pump blood around the body.
Scary stuff. It's scary stuff. And actually, only a couple of weeks ago, nearby where I live in Elwood, somewhere close by here, there was a 14-year-old that suffered a cardiac arrest during football training. And the beautiful Rain Histon, who's a paramedic, who's a friend of mine, she was nearby with a defib. So some people were giving him CPR and she turned up and he survived. So
wow.
Yeah, just in, like, very, very frightening to think that a young, healthy, fit 14-year-old football player could have that same experience.
And there are a number of reasons why somebody may go into cardiac arrest. A heart attack is just one reason. There's genetic conditions, there's a whole lot of things. But the important thing is to be able to recognize when somebody is in cardiac arrest and then implementing the chain of survival. So in that case, people obviously recognized, they started CPR, and your friend luckily had an AED nearby, and the chain of survival was in play again. And that works. There's no difference chain of survival is shown, as we said before, to take somebody's chance of survival from 5 or 10% up to 70%. And that's just amazing to think that, you know, if we can just get this happening throughout more parts of Australia, if we can have communities with more AEDs in them, there'll be more saves, more people will live. And that's so important.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Tell me what's changed in you since?
Well,
what
I now
hasn't?
have you calling. Yeah, look, lots of things haven't changed. My diet's changed.
I was going to say, I bloody hope your diet has.
It's changed. It's still not as good as it probably should be, but it's changed a lot. And look, to be honest, you know, my cholesterol wasn't high when they did the test in hospital. So as bad as my diet might be, I don't know if it was solely responsible for causing this. However, I've got to change that. So I've cut a lot of bad things out, which is good. What else has changed? Obviously now I'm on a new mission, and that is around all of this sort of advocacy. And that's pretty big. That takes up a lot of time, and that's a big calling, but it's obviously something that I'm very passionate about for obvious reasons. And yeah, look, I don't know. Am I a different person? You know, you kicked off by asking who is the person behind the yellow skivvy. I think I'm still the same person, but you know, I'm reflecting on the growth that's happened inside of me. And I think when you go through something like what I went through, you can't come out the other side the same as you were before. So there's obviously differences about me. And I think one of the big differences is that I'm now more at peace with who I actually am as a person, which sounds interesting. I think for a long time I had struggled with self-esteem issues and never really dealt with that. You know, I was always trying to be somebody who I wasn't, trying to live up to other people's, or what I thought other people expected me to be, I think would be the best way to put it, perhaps.
Yeah.
You know, and I think now, I just think, look, I am who I am. People can take me or leave me. If they don't like me, they don't like me. I'm not going to try and please people. I'm just going to be who I am, and I like who I am. I'm happy with who I am. Anything else other than what I do.
Yeah, I think
now
you know
place.
that identity, you know, to be 19 and to fall into something that turned as big as the Wiggles did, where you are identified all over the bloody world, you know, by kids, by parents, by everybody. But not only that, you're part of a team, and you were part of that tight-knit team and that identity for so long. And then, you know, when you mentioned stepping out into the next thing, I was just thinking that must be a struggle, because from 19 years old into adulthood, into, you know, being an adult, and I think at an age where you really do start to rediscover yourself. I think we all get to an age where we start dropping the ball and going, oh shit, I've got a bit of self-growth to do here. But I just think, you know, in your situation, that would have been tenfold.
Yeah, look, it probably was. And I did struggle, as I said. But, you know, I think now's the time to really get it right. I've been given this second chance, and I've got to get a lot of things, not right. I shouldn't say right, because then there's some sort of measure or expectation that things should be a certain way. The only thing that should be a certain way is that I should be happy within myself for who I am, because I know I'm a good person. And, you know, I'm not a malicious kind of person. I don't set out to do harm. That's not who I am. So I'm a good person. If people don't like the way I do the things I do, that's not my problem. You know, that's their problem to deal with. And that comes back again to that thing of understanding other people, and that we all go through different shit. You know, we go through different things, but we all have those struggles. And if you can't take some time out to not judge someone going through what they're going through and dealing with it in their own way, then that's your problem. It's their problem. They've got to deal with it. But if you're going to judge them, that's your problem. Don't take on that responsibility. We're not here to judge others. We're here to help others, if anything else. And I think that's another lesson in life too, that we don't, you know, we get taught from a young age that there are these expectations, or, you know, what's the term? Sort of behavioral norms in the community. You know, we have rules, we have expectations, we have laws, all these things that we have to be bound by, social conditioning. And so we get taught about that. Now we're seeing massive changes in that now, but growing up through my period, and probably even before that, even more so, things were a certain way and you were expected to behave a certain way. Now we do embrace more the individual and let them be who they are, and we're more flexible with our boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not, in terms of allowing people to be who they feel they should be, to be themselves. And I think that's great. I think that's what we need to do, not be judgmental. So we're kind of getting to this point in the world, in life, where we are having this light bulb moment. This I don't like the word woke, you know, the woke movement, because I think that gets used in a lot of cases where it's not actually applicable. But there's a lot of times when we are waking up to the spirituality that is driving the world and driving humankind, and allowing the individual to be who they are without judgment.
Mm. How have you experienced COVID?
Look, we live in Sydney, so we've been very, very fortunate. You said you live in Elwood.
Yeah.
So that's Victoria, and I can only imagine what you have been through. So I take my hat off to people in Victoria that have endured what you've been through, and I cannot imagine what it's been like. We went through maybe 6 weeks of some sort of imposition where things weren't really the way that we were used to them being. But look, we are pretty much now back to living a normal life here in Sydney.
Yeah.
There's been spikes in the cases in the last few days, and they're, you know, typical media trumpeting that we might have to go back into these restrictions again. I don't know, but what I do know is that we have, until now, been very much unscathed in terms of the impact upon society compared to Melbourne. I'm not saying we've gotten away totally. We haven't. There's many people that have lost jobs, businesses that have closed, people that have been financially impacted, people who have lost lives, families that have lost loved ones. There's been impact. But compared to Victoria, you know, we've not had the same experience. So yeah. How has it been for you? What
Greg, it's been amazing. When you first jumped on the podcast and you spoke of adversity and opportunity, I had goosebumps a couple of times, because I thought that's exactly how that's my relationship with adversity, is just that. And when this happened, I've got 2 gyms, and one of them only just opened in it took the best part of a year to finally get built and open. So wow. That opened in December, and so we had 2 of them, and they were just hitting it. All the hard work was paying off, and they were just hitting a spot where we could start to just, you know, maybe make $1. And we had to close the doors. So I'm a PT, I'm a personal trainer, and I have gyms. So we were the hardest hit. And in a material world and in a circumstantial world, I was hit very hard. And I've got family, all my family's in Tasmania. So if I look at all of those things, it's why I don't mind sort of saying to people, it's been the best year ever for me, because it's not material, it's not circumstances. I've been hit hard. I could, you know, and I still could, like, who knows what's going to happen? Anything could happen to me financially, but I found purpose and drive, and I started working with Victorian Ambulance, and in turn, I launched this podcast, and the passion and the drive in the undertones of this podcast is the stuff that means something to me. And I would go through 2020 tenfold for twice as long just to come out the other side and be where I am today. The personal growth and the change and the learnings, and the, you know, speaking to people like you, and being able to get one-on-one insight to things that you've experienced, and to sit down and spend time with people like that just wouldn't have happened in the life I was living before. This was never the plan. Right. And it's that whole thing, like you said, I had a vision, but I don't know how it's going to get there. but I'll let go. But I know where I want to go. Sometimes you don't have to control every step, and I'm a believer in that. So yeah, it's been great.
And that's really interesting that, you know, hearing you talk about your experience of, you know, busting your gut to get the gym set up for 12 months, then all hell breaks loose. And that's the point where you chose to look at things positively rather than focus on what you'd potentially lost. And that point was defining. Yeah. And it's a springboard. It's like walking out on the springboard and going, okay, am I going to dive off here or am I going to walk back down the stairs? You took the leap.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that made it very simple. 12 or 18 months before, I was approached by my business partners and they proposed, would you like, you know, we've got this idea and we'd love you to be involved. Would you like to go into business with us? And at that point in time, I thought to myself, that's a big risk. For me, if this doesn't work out, I'm a single person living away from my family, living in Victoria, my family's in Tasmania. I've worked really hard to get myself to where I am now. And security and stability is something that I value and I've worked hard to have. So I could jump in with these people and do this thing and I could lose everything. But if I say yes to that and I lose everything, is what I experience and learn and is the change that I will go through, whatever that may be. I don't know what it will be, but do I think I'll get enough out of it to make it worth it? And the answer was absolutely. So when this happened, I was like, all right, wasn't what you thought it was, but you've already answered the question. So whether you lose everything or not, this is like it mightn't have been the circumstances that you thought, but you've already answered this question. So it was very easy for me.
Well, that's great. That's a very good way to look at things, because if you go into something knowing that the worst thing that's going to happen is that you've answered a question and you come out the other side knowing the answer to that, that's a win-win.
Yeah. It's been great.
It's very powerful.
Yeah. How do you feel about the colour yellow? I like to ask the hard-hitting questions here on Roll with the Punches. Do you have any yellow items of clothing?
No, I don't. It's never been one of my favourite colours, to be honest. But I'm very proud of wearing the yellow skivvy. Like, it's synonymous with me, and I don't dislike it. It's just well, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's not true. When I was younger, at school, our winter school uniform was actually a yellow skivvy. So in the 1980s, I was wearing yellow skivvy way back then. So I kind of feel like I was destined to be the yellow one in the Wiggles all along.
Well, we've connected on a few points in this podcast, but also a few years ago, one of my best friends got married and her bridesmaids, she had 4 bridesmaids, and we got to choose. Everyone wore a different colour. She gave us the colour. She delegated the colour. Well, we got to choose the style of the dress. So we could wear whatever we liked. And I was the yellow bridesmaid. So I feel like, this podcast was always meant to be from way back then.
That's right. Yeah, even though our first attempt to do the podcast went horribly wrong. But we got...
And you know what? Last week I had that picture here sitting next to my seat to show you, but I put it away now.
I'm so sorry. Oh, dear. Well, anyway, look, we did get there in the end. We made it happen.
We did. Hey, look, Greg, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show. I know that you are super busy. I've seen you on television. I've seen you on the internet. I've seen you everywhere, running around the nation, doing amazing things. And it's Shocktober, which I didn't know when I set this up. So everything is happening for a reason.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, it is Awareness Month for Shocktober. 16th of October is actually Restart a Heart Day. So that's a global day that happens all around the world. And so, it's a big day in the community of people that are all about educating and advocating for AEDs and CPR. So Restart a Heart Day, Shocktober, all very worthwhile things to be aware of.
Amazing. I better get busy tonight and get this ready to have in the airwaves by tomorrow morning then, I guess. All right.
Well, if you can, that's great. If not, it will still resonate with people regardless.
Excellent. Look, to sign off, we better have a few bars of fruit salad.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Oh no, fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit, I'm out of practice. What about a bit of, can you point your fingers and do the twist? Can you point your fingers and do the twist? Well, we're gonna go up, then go down, get back up and turn around. Can you point your fingers and do the twist?
I love it. I'd join in, but I'd absolutely ruin the song. You've got quite a great voice, haven't you?
Oh, no. I've got an old voice now.
You when I was Googling, as I do, to find one of my favorite songs, and you sang "Throw Your Arms Around Me." Is that you?
Oh yeah, great song.
Yeah, I found that.
Yeah.
I love that song.
Yeah, I actually recorded that down, I think, at Elwood in Joe Camilleri's studio, Woodstock Street. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Elwood. It was around there. If it wasn't in Elwood, but I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, Joe Camilleri, I was a massive fan of the Black Sorrows, and Joe is just an amazing guy. And I got to work with him, and so I did Throw Your Arms Around Me. He produced that for me, and I think it's an amazing song.
I love it. I was like, this can't be. And so I played that on repeat a few times last week after you stood me up.
I hope you liked it. It's an old version, but hey, you know. And
I loved it.
Never meet again. So shed your skin, let's get started. And you will throw your arms around me. Yes, you will throw your arms around me. Yeah, great song.
Oh, don't keep me going. I'll have you here for hours singing tunes to me if you get me started. That's amazing.
Yeah, I could do that for years. Yeah. No
oh, thank you. Well, we will keep following your stuff. And how do people follow what you're doing? Have you got any social links or platforms that you'd like me to put in the show notes?
No, look, not really. I'm just out there doing stuff. People will find me if they want to find me. You know,
just look for the yellow sweater.
Yeah, look for the yellow skivvy, or look me up on LinkedIn or wherever I might be. But it's just please do what you can to educate yourself about CPR and AEDs. And please, if you need an AED, there's places you can go to get them. AED Authority, my good friend there, Paul Klein, he can sort you out. So yeah, look, educate yourself, because empowerment is the key to helping someone's life be saved. And I'm so grateful that people around me knew how to do that.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiffanee.
Boom.